welcome to another I Love Data Friday here at the International Data Evaluation Center on the campuses of The Ohio State University. And ladies and gentlemen, it is so good to have you here for I Love Data Fridays episode number 30. And folks, today we are going to be talking about how do I use the OS Total Score. So, hey, who's talking data to you today? Well, you've got me, Jeff Breimer-Bashore, Director of IT and Operations here at the International Data Evaluation Center. And oh boy, do we have data today. So I'm going to go starting off here about talking about a little background between this, little background for this episode. So at the 2018 Teacher Leader Institute this year, I got a lot of people pulling me aside by the elbow saying, hey, Jeff, how do I use the total score? Or I can't wrap my head around this total score. Or, why would I use the total score? Or why do I care about the total score? So hopefully today we're going to cover all these questions and answer your questions about the total score. All right, so let's talk a little data. So first we're going to talk about what is the OS Total Score. And then we're going to talk about how not to use the OS Total Score. And then we're going to talk about how to use it appropriately. When should I use the OS Total Score? Do I have to compute the OS Total Score? And if I wanted to, how do I? So there we go. That's what we're going to cover today. So ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little data. All right. So first, let's talk about what is the OS Total Score. So simply put, it is a 0 to 800 point scale, and this scale represents a child's early literacy acquisition. So the higher the score that a child gets and higher the OS Total Score, the more proficient the child is. They have better early literacy acquisition skills. It is a normally distributed score, so it's a score that when you look at it like on a chart, it forms a bell curve. So a lot of the tasks of the observation survey, they're non-normally distributed. They're squished to one end in the fall and squished to the other end in the spring. They don't distribute normally. So this makes it good to use for research, but as you see later, it also makes it useful when we want to do comparisons. This normal distributed nature of it allows us to do nice things with it. The other thing, when the OS Total Score was computed and created, the computations involved take into account that certain tasks of the observation survey are harder than others. So for example, like letter identification, it's a fairly easy task for kids. They tend to score pretty high. Writing vocabulary, it's possible for kids to have a large writing vocabulary. So these things that you might think will affect the total score, and they do a little bit, but the computations and calculations involved in creating the total score take these things into account. And if you want to read more about it, you can go back and read the Fall 2012 Journal of Reading Recovery, the article, The U.S. Norm, Trends, and Recommendations on Observation Survey Total Score Use by former IDEC Research Director Jerry D'Agostino. So I think we're at a good point. We can start trying to get a little meaning out of the total score. You're probably saying to yourself, hey, Jeff, you've explained to me it's a score that ranges from 0 to 800. Great, thumbs up, but what the heck does that score mean? So here's a table from that same Reading Recovery Journal article written by Dr. D'Agostino, and it's showing some information about the total score. So let me just quickly go over this. If you look at this first one here, a total score of 346, this is the value that best predicts if reading recovery student will likely be referred or discontinued. So it's telling us that the total score of 346 is the best predictor. If a child is most likely going to be, if they're below a 346, they're most likely to be referred or recommended, or if they're above a 346, that they're going to be discontinued. This is not a foregone conclusion. This is not to say that all children are. It's just a best predictor. And in fact, I'm going to talk later about how we use it You might be able to use this for like some time management on your end. Like, which children do you want to monitor more? We can have the total score do this. In the fall, the mean score, the average score for reading recovery kids when they come in the fall is a 375. 95% of our reading recovery kids throughout the school year had a fall value at or below a 435. So most of our kids come in, 95% come in at or below a 435. A score of 418, I'll read the official version here, is a fall score that maximizes hits and minimizes false positives and false negatives in predicting a spring text level of 16 with no intervention. So if a child is at a 418 or above, it's telling us that this is the best predictor number that a child will actually get up to a spring text reading level 16 without an actual intervention. So if you think about it up here, this one before said that 95% of our kids come at a 435 below. We have a group of kids that might actually be getting reading recovery when maybe they don't actually need it. But now, I'm not saying that there may be this problem, but I'm just saying that you can use this information when, looking at children and everything. Our fall random sample kids, our random sample kids come in with about a 433. Kids at the end of the school year who have a 529 are most likely reading at a level of 16. So just a few things that you can get some meaning out of the OS total score, and as you look for stuff, and this is going to kind of lead me, I'm going to take not really a step backwards, but let me give you a couple scenarios of how not to use the OS total score. First of all, we do not use it for student selection. Reading and teacher leaders, I know you guys, you take this to heart already, and it's kind of one of these things that we want to make sure that school district administrators and teams understands themselves. We don't use it for student selection. Reading recovery already has a very good and well-tested selection process, a very sensitive sections selection process. And likewise, we don't use it for decisions whether or not to discontinue children or not. You have a process that's defined by teacher observation and data, but it's also informed by teacher experience. So we don't use the OS total score for that. And we don't use it when we're diagnosing and working with an individual child. And I want to use an example here. So let's all say hello to Enrique. Enrique, hello. This is Enrique's fall total score, a 377. All right, begin diagnosis of Enrique. Very interesting. There's not much we can say about Enrique there. All we have is the OS total score. So when working and diagnosing with an individual child, the individual tasks of the observation survey provide us with more insight about an individual child than that total score will. So when thinking about and working about with an individual child, it's best to just fall back to using the 6 tasks of the observation survey, and you will glean much more information from it than you will with the total score. Okay, so now how to use the OS total score. And folks, and I've just got one word here, it's comparison. Where the OS total score really excels at is when you are in situations when you need to do comparisons, whether it's comparing one student to another student, a school to a school, a district to a district. The OS total score is great for doing that. So this is just a simple example I'm going to show. I'm not saying it's the best example of using the OS total score, but it'll help demonstrate the idea of comparison here. So let's bring back Enrique. Welcome back, Enrique. Here are his fall scores, okay, right down at the bottom. Now, we're going to bring up Monica. Hello, Monica. And these are Monica's fall scores. Now, I know you teacher leaders are using your trained eyes and are already gleaning all sorts of information from these observation survey scores. And that's great. I know you guys already have formed opinions about these children already. Now, to the untrained eye, let's just say I'm just, average principal who didn't a principal who is not experienced with literacy but may have been a former math teacher, this information is not as meaningful to me. If you were to ask that person which child is lower or is having more difficulty with their reading or has less less skills in early literacy acquisition, you, the teacher leader, could probably tell us, but the principal who has had a background in math may not be able to tell us. So the OS total score can kind of tell us this. So we bring up the total scores. We can see Enrique's is a 377 and Monica's is a 339. So the total score is telling us that Monica is a slightly less proficient student in the fall when it comes to her literacy skills. And this is just an easy way to compare the children. Where is Monica weaker? Well, you go to the OS scores for that. For example, probably her biggest deficit compared to Enrique is in her phonemic recognition with the hearing and recording sounds and words. So notice how we started the conversation here with the total score, and then we can go to the OS scores if we need to. But comparison. And here are some I got examples of comparisons coming up. Another way you can use the OS total score is for, I couldn't think of a good way, so I'm just going to call it some time management. As a teacher leader, you only have so much time. And we're going to bring up Monica again, and Monica's scores and her total score there. And then I am going to bring up the table we looked at earlier from that journal article on Dr. D'Agostino. And specifically, we're going to look at this 346. Remember, the total score of 346 is the best predictor if a reading recovery student will likely be referred or discontinued. So if a student is below that 46, it's more likely they'll be recommended. If they're above, it's more likely they're going to be discontinued. Now remember, this is not a foregone conclusion. I'm not telling you to write this student off. What I'm telling you is that you can use this to help identify children that might need more of your attention and more of your time. Whereas if you're dealing with a student that's around, say, a 418, remember our 418 tells us, a 418 in the fall, tells us that they actually have a better chance of getting to 16 on their own with no intervention. So you can use this total score as a way to help you do some time management. Where do I need to focus some attention to make sure things are happening okay, and where am I not going to have to give some of my attention? So a way you can do it, I'm actually going to show you a report that's actually using an on-demand report that's using these two pieces of information right here in a report to help you try to do that. All right, so when should I use the OS total score? And I think the best time to use the OS total score is when you're doing charts for administrators, all right? Because it is a great conversation starter. If you have other times that you think you've used the OS total score and you want to tell me about it, send me an email, brimerj@idecweb.us, and I would love to hear it and be able to share it with people. Excuse me. So here is an example. Here's an actual teacher leader example. This teacher leader was trying to make the argument for more teachers in the school. And we are showing data for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, in a school district. So we've got 6 years of school district data. And we are comparing the growth of reading recovery and tested not instructed children for each year from the start of the school year. So the bottom of the bars are where children started at the beginning of the school year, to the top of the bars where they finished at the end of the school year. And the teacher leader said she was noticing that they were having a lot of kids that really needed reading recovery. Can we see that in our data? And so remember, with our tested not instructed kids, these are kids who are the kids who looked most like reading recovery children, that probably needed it in the fall, still needed it at the middle of the school year, but didn't get it. And as you can see, her tested not instructed children for most of the years were fairly similar to her reading recovery children, especially in 2014 2015. You know, there were some years they looked like they were up. Well, this one was still below a 400. This one was a little above a 400. But you can see that these kids they also weren't making that quite as much accelerated growth. They were not catching. They were certainly behind the reading recovery children. They didn't make it up as high on the total score. So the total score shows that very well. Another scenario, you may have a school or a school district where you see the kids coming in, and these kids are in general just struggling, and the teachers are working phenomenal, doing miracles with the kids, but they have poor discontinuing rates, and it's because the kids are just coming in so low. So this is another way to sort of show success. So this is actual data from a school district where they were having this issue where the kids that they were serving were just so low. It was just, you can only get so much growth out of the children, but the teachers were actually doing a great job. So what we are once again looking at are growth from the start of the school year. The bottom of each bar shows the start of the school year, and the top of each bar shows where children finished at the end of the school year. The first three bars are school district data. So the first one is the first round discontinued children for this school district. This next bar is first round recommended children. And this one right here is the second round discontinued children in that school district. The next bar is the average reading recovery child in the United States. All right? And then this last one is the average first grader, our random sample. All right, the average first grader. And above each bar is how many years of growth each child made. And it's comparing it to the average first grader. So in this school district, her first round discontinued children were making about 1.6 years worth of growth compared to the average first grader. And in the United States, reading recovery teachers in general get about 1.4 years worth of growth from the children. So these teachers are not only, they're fostering more growth, and they even have a harder time. They're coming in, their first round students are coming in much lower than what we would see your typical reading recovery child come in. In fact, their second round students look like the typical reading recovery child. Even better, their first round recommended students are still making 1.2 years worth of growth. They are making more growth than what you would see from the average first grader. So you can use this to help paint a picture where you think it's a picture where you think you may have a picture of failure. It's not. It is a picture of success. It's a picture of success going on here. How is this not successful? All right. Okay. So do I have to compute the OS total score? And the answer is no. IDEC is already doing it and using it for you. We're already incorporating it in things. You will also find a total score for every child in your data dump. You'll find a fall entry, mid-year exit, and year-end total scores in your data dumps. And you will also find total score information in Table 3.7 in your site and district reports. So IDEC is already using the total score for you. I'm going to bring over a couple sample reports here where you can find the total score. So hopefully a lot of you are already familiar with this report. This is the OS scores by school on-demand report that you have access to on the IDEC website. And what this report is showing, it is showing the growth of children from the start of the school year. So each bar is where children start at the beginning of the school year, and at the top of each bar is where they finish at the end of the school year. And this chart is showing full program children. And there is one bar for each school. All right, so each of these bars is the growth for one school. Now, the dotted lines, the bottom dashed line is showing you nationally across the United States where full program children start at the beginning of the school year. The top dashed line shows you where full program children finish at the end of the school year. Now, if you need another explanation of this report, you can always go to this link up here and click on On-Demand Report videos, and you can watch our YouTube videos that explain these reports in detail. Each bar, so on this chart, the bars are organized from left to right, from least amount of growth to most amount of growth on the OS total score. And the actual amount of growth is this black number down here. And you'll see the names of the schools down here at the bottom of the chart. So comparison. Look at how we can compare the performance of our schools. All right? I mean, look at this one school over here. Look at how low reading recovery children are coming in. Is this a kindergarten thing? Are we serving a lot of kids who might actually be special ed kids with learning disabilities? I don't know. But remember what I said, conversation starter. This is a great conversation starter. All right, we are starting the conversation. What else? I mean, and look at the phenomenal growth on some of these teachers are doing. Right here, beating the odds. Kids coming in pretty low compared to what we see nationally, and getting higher than what you would see usually nationally. So this could be a great conversation starter with a school district, with a principal or something. You can print this off and color out the names of the other schools, and really, start some conversations about it. If you need to, at that point, you can then also go look at the same chart, but do it by each individual task of the observation survey. So a great chart to use. All right, another great chart to use is this, what we call our on-demand report, is what's called this student data summary. And this report just gives you some basic student data information or summary information about the students in your site. You can see the name of the students right along here. I know it's probably blurred out in this video. You can see the name of the teacher, so we know that the teachers below here belong to the student. The name of the school is right here. And you'll notice on this one, so we're looking at, it reports the number of lessons the children got, the number of weeks, the number of missed lessons, the number of lessons per week they're getting. It's giving you the fall text reading levels, text reading levels at fall, entry, exit, and year end. And it's also giving you the end of program status. Now, you'll also notice two of the kids here have a shading on them. Sort of this reddish pinkish and this purplish bluish one. The pinkish shading here is a child that on their fall total score had less than a 346. If you remember back to that chart, that was our indicator that kids below 346 are more likely to be recommended. So this could be an easy way to say, hey, have the teacher or you keeping up some contact about this student right here, some extra contact, and see how they're doing. This student right here, flagged with the sort of the purplish blue, it's indicating that they had the text reading level greater than, I believe it was the 418, fall OS total score greater than a 418, and it's telling us that really this child probably could get to a text reading level 16 without an intervention. So maybe don't have to keep as much of an eye on this child as you would this child down here. So there's a couple examples of how we're already using the OS total score for you. If you really wanted to compute the OS total score by yourself, how do you do it? All right. So first, remember, it is a two-step process. Two-step process. Step number one, sum all 6 scores of a child's observation survey together. Sum all those 6 scores up. This gives you a raw score. This is not the total score. This is step 1. All right, sum it all up so you get a raw total score. Step 2, you go to page 14 of the U.S. Norms document, and you actually look up the total score. So let's do an example. Let's bring back Enrique. Hello, Enrique. Here is Enrique's fall score. So we're going to compute his fall OS total score. It should come out to a 377 if we do it right. So let me bring up a calculator. So 0 plus 25 plus 1 plus 13 plus 49 plus 7. Boom. All right. So we've just completed step 1. We've gotten a raw score, not the total score, a raw score of 95. So I'm going to go and download our norms document from our website. There it is right there. I'm going to open it up. We go to page 14. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There we go. So now remember, so here is the place where we look it up. It's the raw score to scale score conversion table. You will see the darker gray columns for the raw scores and the white columns for the scale score. So we look up the raw score in the gray column, in a gray column, and then we go one column to the right to get the scale score, which is the total score. So Enrique had a 95, and let me zoom in a little bit. So here is his raw score of 95. We go to one column to the right, and his total score is a 377. So there you go. That is how you can do it if you want to. You don't have to. We're already using it a lot for you and actually giving it to you in places. But if you want to do it, that's how you can do it. All right, I need to click on a few things over here and get myself to the next page. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I sure hope you enjoyed this episode of I Love Data Fridays and learning how to use the OS Total Score. We will talk to you all later, and